they always say SYL, it means speak your language.
Right.
And I would always joke, I'm like, if I spoke the language of the Marines, I'd get kicked out of here.
Oh yeah.
But when I was with Marines, and you're leading a fire team of combat hardened Marines or guys who come from gangs or from all over walks of life, like you got to speak their language.
Yeah.
Because if I say, "Oh shoot, darn it, rats!"
Right.
Like, gosh dang it, guys, move faster.
Yeah. Yeah.
They're like, who is this guy?
Yeah.
There's a false notion in our society. I'll take care of you if you take care of me. But the truth is, if we actually take care of ourselves first, only then can we change our life, change our homes, change our cities, our relationships, and eventually change the world. For those of you who appreciate the holistic lifestyle, you've come to the right place. Your host, Emanuel Zevallos, is a certified emotion and body code practitioner and certified group energy facilitator. You are now listening to Healing the Healer podcast.
This show is brought to you by Heal, the social media platform for those who love the holistic lifestyle. Are you tired of sharing holistic tips and getting banned or going to Facebook jail for sharing the truth? Are you tired of all the Facebook political drama? Tired of people who don't support energy healing growth? My wife Jess and I created a social media platform that was meant for people who love social media, communicating with like-minded people, and love learning hacks from other wellness practitioners. It's free to join. www.haveempathyandlove.com. Plus, every week you have the option and choice to opt into a cutting-edge healing group where you get energy healing for 7 days straight. Again, it's free to join. www.haveempathyandlove.com.
Hello and welcome. My name is Blake Norton. You're probably wondering what's going on right now if you just tuned in or just started this episode. But we're going to do a little bit of a little something backwards today. I'm going to be interviewing the host today, Emanuel Zevallos. So I got to say, Emanuel, I've actually wanted to do this for a little bit because I've done it with other clients of ours and people whose work I find like extremely fascinating. That's why we signed you as a client, and that's why you came to us, I think. But yeah, it's pretty cool. I mean, I did your voiceover for this intro, so if you just saw the intro, that was me, because I think you got some tools in your belt, and you do some very unique stuff. You know, I didn't even know about the emotion code until I met you. And then it seems like I've bumped into a few more practitioners. Like, it just feels like there's a lot of momentum growing around the emotion code. And so I'm going to be interviewing you today, and we kind of hijacked this episode. So
Totally cool. Let's do it.
yeah. Well, first off, man, how's it going?
It's going really good.
It's going good. Yeah. Yeah. Well, how are you liking podcasting here?
I'm loving it. I love the environment, and everyone seems really nice so far.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, you fit right in. So this is cool. So a little bit about you. Like, let's hear about it. What's your backstory, man? Like, if those of you that are tuning in, right, you got some people that have watched you a lot or seen your clips, but like, where are you from?
Okay, so I'm from Rancho Palos Verdes, California, and I grew up with two oncologists, hematologists that both came from Lima, Peru, and I thought that was very normal to have two parents as doctors. Found out later on that's not normal at all. And so I was kind of living in a little Pleasantville in Palos Verdes. To not be made fun of, I would say I lived in Torrance or I lived close to San Pedro, but I would never mention Palos Verdes because it became a stigma that, you know, it's like, oh, you're one of those rich kids or whatever. And yeah, so I didn't want to be included in that. And I already got bullied. I don't need to get bullied for something else, you know. But as a child, though, I grew up with MTV and Tom and Jerry. There was a Salvadorian maid.
When were you born? Sorry.
I was born in 81.
81.
Yeah,
okay.
so I'm 40.
So you're a 90s. Your teenage years were in the 90s.
Yeah.
So you're like a 90s kid.
Yep.
Like through and through. Gotcha.
Yeah. And so I just grew up with, because they were always gone at work, I grew up with like MTV and, you know, Aerosmith on the elevator. Like that's how I grew up. And, you know, Nirvana was like really big when I was a teen. So, you know, when I felt depressed, I can like relate to Kurt Cobain. So, but I think the big thing is that I think the average parent spends time with their kids about 15 minutes a day, which is Not a lot. And
That's
and
average?
Average, yeah. Average.
in-
15 minutes a day. Yeah, just that's it, you know.
Whoa. Is that's just in America? Like the
In America,
average?
that's what I found out. And what's
average.
interesting is like that kind of made me realize that how much we're not shaping our kids mentally, and that we're like letting TV raise them. And so that is where I fit in perfectly. Is I was raised by television. I actually learned Spanish through the lady that cleaned our house. So whenever I spoke Salvadorian Spanish in Peru, they'd be like, you have like a weird accent going on. You know, it's like, yeah, because I wasn't raised really by my parents who also speak Spanish, you know? And so even though I always say whenever I was sort of spoon fed with a silver spoon, but it was not my parents feeding me. You know, that's kind of the way I look at it.
Interesting.
So I mean, I always used to tell my parents I would have rather had middle class parents and then actually seen them more. You know, and so that's my childhood, really.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
And because I've heard a lot of different things too. People that grow up in the middle class, like they might get more parental time. Rich families might focus more on parents too. But like I've heard that like having a middle class mindset is like a really dangerous mindset.
Sure.
Because you get really comfy and not enough to like do big things. So did you feel a lot of pressure? Like to be a doctor, to be something great?
Okay, so that's a really great question. So what happened is that my father never really gave me an instruction on what I should be or not be. He just was really concerned for my 0.6 GPA my whole life. Okay. My mother, though, she says, I don't want you to be a doctor because she showed me, I remember this one night, she's like, look at this huge cell book. And it was this like thick book and it was literally about cells. And I was just like, she's like, does that interest you at all? I'm like, not really, Mom. You know, and she said, well, then you shouldn't be a doctor because like, I love this book, you know? And she says like, whatever you like love that you could read all day, she's like, do something like that gets you excited. And she also taught me really early on that, you know, never focus on the money, focus on just serving people and money will come as a byproduct. But I remember she didn't tell me the second half till I was older. So I remember when she said never focus on money, I was like never focusing on money. So I was just broke all the time, you know? And so she didn't finish her sentence, you know, or we don't talk about money in the house, you know? And that was in my mind, it's like money is bad. So whenever I used to acquire funds, I would give it to my friends as gifts and just buy something just to get it off of me. So I can be like, you know, cleansed before my mom, if that makes sense. Yeah, so I grew up like that, but I wish she would, later on she told me, she said, no, it's because she's what they call a yellow in marketing. You know, there's like the blue, the red, the yellow, the green being all about intellectual, I need to know all the information, red being all about the money, yellow being a philanthropist, and blue being fun, having fun. So there's like kind of a marketing thing, like what type of color are you? My mom's like definitely a yellow. Yeah, my mom's a yellow all the way.
Philanthropy.
Yeah, philanthropy. Don't talk about the money. I just love helping people.
Impact. Yeah. Chasing an impact, a lot of people call it.
Yep. Chasing impact.
Okay. What color are you? What do you think?
I think I'm a yellow and a green. Yeah. So green. I like to know the ins and outs of things. You know, when you study different modalities, it's like the great results are a byproduct of your studying and applying, you know? So I have to look into things and see, well, why did that do that? And how did that work? So you have to be a master questioner. So that way you get different results. If you're just kind of like very stagnant, and like, this is all I need, and then hopefully it works with everyone, you're not really helping as much as you could help, in my opinion.
That's interesting. Yeah. So you're yellow and green, and that's like, is it like super analytical?
Yeah, so super analytical, just kind of like, well, how does that work? How the ins and outs? And then the yellow, I know I'm a yellow for sure because I was in direct sales for like 10 years and I failed horribly. There's so many different work from home companies, and I have like nothing to show for it. So I would be the guy in the Nordstrom suit in the back telling everyone that this works, and I would just be taking notes off people that were becoming wealthy while I was just, you know, making $1 out of 15 cents, you know? And so, but through that, I realized I'm like, wow, it's like, even if I made just a little bit of money, it kept me in the game to help out people who had more success than me. So it was kind of, so I knew I was a yellow, because if I was a red, I would have left way before, because I'm not making money here and I'm all about the Benjamin, so I'm out. But for 10 years, I struggled in the yellow realm of no money. And I just went there because I love to help people. And I was like, maybe one day this will pan out.
Right.
But it never did.
So that like, that reward, you think you get that from your mom, then obviously. But that philanthropy, for those of you that don't know, it's somebody who's chasing an outcome rather, and it's usually centered around helping people or a charity, or when they say a billionaire playboy philanthropist, like what they call Iron Man or something. Yeah, so I have similar tendencies too, and when I had a tiny bit of money, like I would just give it away, or like you were, like you said, you didn't really get much from that,
right?
What were you chasing? Like, what was that thing you were trying to get? What was rewarding?
So what I was chasing at that time was, there's a David O. McKay quote that said, "No success can compensate for failure in the home." And what drove me was the idea of being a stay-at-home dad. That's what drove me. And I just knew that I was like, I'm going to do the exact opposite of what my parents did, which was work all the time and make great income. And I was like, I'm going to find a way to work from home, and so I can be there for my kids and they don't have to be raised by MTV the way I was. So that sold me every single morning. It's like, one day I'll be a stay-at-home dad, and one day I'll be able to be there for them the way my parents weren't. So that drove me. Yeah, big time.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, so I must have quit literally 1,000 times. And one of my mentors told me, he said, it's okay to quit, just don't call corporate. So
I like that. That's good. So you were a young kid, grew up on MTV, like I think all of us did in the 90s to some degree, but you said you got a heavy dose of it because they were gone. Makes sense. I remember you saying you went to a military school. For what age were you when you went to military school?
Yeah, so military school, I was doing so poorly all the way up to age 13, 14, where my parents started threatening me and saying, okay, if you don't shape up, you're going to military school. And I didn't shape up. So it really caught my attention. Virginia, compared to California, I was in Hargrave Military Academy, and it was the summertime there. So it wasn't as strict, but it was all the, I don't know how to even call them, people lower than the lower class. I mean, people like children who ran away from home at 5.
Delinquents.
Yeah, delinquents. Yeah, children who did heroin at 9. I mean, I saw some pretty insane.
And then a rich kid.
What? and then the rich kid with a Hawaiian shirt, because he said bring collared shirts. I'm the only one with a Hawaiian shirt, so I stood out like a sore thumb. And I'm in there, and I'm just like, I remember the first day I went there was this bald man, and he came up to me, and he grabbed me by my shirt, and he said, "You're the one from California. I'll be watching you." I'm just like, good evening. And then I went to my room, and I remember I was like, oh, I forgot to brush my teeth. And I got up out of bed quietly, and it was already what they call, taps, right? So
sure.
I was supposed to be in bed. It's like maybe 10:15. So I just got up and I'm just going to brush my teeth quick and go to bed. And then I hear this storming down the hallway, and it was that old man again. And he said, "Stand by your bed," and so I did that, and then he like reached into my mouth, and he thought I was like doing some drugs or something,
No, sure.
Yeah, and I said, "There's nothing in there. I'm just brushing my teeth," and he's like, "You better not do," So that was kind of like my first experience, wake up call to like, I'm failing in life, and now I'm feeling so horribly that people for some reason feel like they have permission to abuse me, and I just kind of like, it really woke me up. And I remember even to my birthday that was there, I had barely any friends there because I was kind of like just scared. Like it was just a very scary place. And I remember they brought me a birthday thing, and I remember how like everyone tried to friend me because they're like, "Oh, your parents sent you a birthday cake here," and then the whole school knew about it. All of a sudden, everybody wanted to be my friend, and I knew I was never going to see them again. Like they're just friends because of the birthday cake.
Yeah.
But so yeah, So I just said I got to get out of here. I'm not like you guys. I need to go just. I just need to do really well. So I got my first B and my first A. I think it was a B in English, and I got an A in math. And then my parents were like, "You did so good. I'm so proud of you that we're going to take you to military school again, but in Carlsbad, California. You're going to stay there for 3 years." So that's kind of the end result of that.
Nice. Okay.
Yeah.
So interesting. How old were you when you went to Virginia?
So I went to military school age 14. I went to the summer in 13, and then I was like 14 when I went there, and I decided to take sophomore year over again. So, and then I just stayed there for 3 years, and actually I became the highest ranking officer in the whole entire school. Wow. So there were 300 people, and I was a lieutenant colonel, and I took it very, very seriously because, I'll just tell you this, basically like, I feel for the people that are out there. If you're listening to this podcast, that sometimes you're fueled by anger and resentment towards your parents. But it's interesting. It's kind of like running on empty. It doesn't. It works for a little bit, but it's not a good way to live. So I was running on fumes with anger and resentment towards my parents to say, I'm going to show you, and then I'm going to be prideful about it when I get there, just because they thought I was a loser, in some cases. So I ran really hard. And God places people in your life to educate you on your what you should do to get to the next level. I really believe that. And there was Paul Bierman, shout out to Paul Bierman, who taught me how to go from a 3.2 GPA to a 4.0 GPA. I had Jason Sinclair, who was all into shining my shoes and like having perfect PA, so I would wake up at 5 a.m. and get my shirt ironed, and things like that. And because of those mentors that I had, I reached the highest level of the school. And there was a very significant prayer that happened at military school, if you don't mind me sharing.
No, go ahead.
But it was a prayer. I basically worked my tail off. I almost committed suicide at 16. I was. Can
we back up a sec? So you're talking about prayer. Before you preface this story of prayer, what's your denomination?
The Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints.
All right, right on. And were you always?
No, I was Catholic.
Okay, so at this time,
yeah, I'm Catholic. Yeah, okay, and I grew up every Sunday I was there. I wasn't the holiday Catholic. I was every Sunday I was there. I went to Catholic school for a couple of years, so I had nuns as principals. Man. Yeah, I know.
You've had double dose. Okay, Catholic school and military school.
Yeah,
man.
Yeah, and so then and I was also for some reason I volunteered for being a altar boy. It's I really. It was the sacred ceremony. I get to clean the hand of the priest. It was, it meant something to me for sure. That was kind of the beginning of why am I fascinated by this? However, though, I do want to preface that my father was into movies like Ben-Hur, the Ten Commandments, The Mission with Robert De Niro in it, Jeremy Irons. There's certain movies that he implanted in my head. Jesus of Nazareth movie, this 2 VHS thing. And he'd play them all the time for me. And I really feel that's where I got my testimony of Jesus Christ. I think those movies, entertainment, entertainment, movies, and spirituality, just it gave me goosebumps that I felt like the Savior, So I think that's why I was the altar boy. But anyway, back to military school, I was it's really powerful that what prayer could do, because I'm used to praying, Our Father who art in heaven, holy is your name. That's just what they teach you. But really, there was no emotion behind it. Even with praying with, when you're praying with the meals, it's bless us, our Lord, these thy gifts. I mean, it's just, I don't feel anything.
It's just
recite.
It's
reciting,
it's memorized.
Mm-hmm. And there's nothing, there's no heart behind it, in my opinion. And so other people might put heart into it, but I'm just saying it's not personal. Yeah. So then what happened is around 17, I got the 3rd highest rank in military school. And I was kind of depressed. Back up before that, junior year, they put me as and you probably know all these ranks here because you're in the military. But basically, I was a first sergeant for headquarters, and headquarters were all the people that wanted to leave school, and they were what they call FTS, which you can
Okay. They're broken
they're broken. They don't want to be there. Yeah, and their parents paid $20,000 a year to be there. So, so they didn't care though, you see? So they were FTS and they didn't want to be part of the school. And they put me in charge of them. And that was my junior year. And so I was taking care of football players, this huge guy named Jeffrey Vazana, just big guys. And they hated when I woke them up every morning, and I would have to wake them at reveille at 6 a.m. And I would just be like, come on, let's go to, so I grew up with that. But I was just getting tired of pushing people who didn't want it for themselves, And so one day I was just like, I'm just going to stop eating. And I did that. And it was beautiful because there was a TAC officer. I don't remember her name, but she came in there and she fed me soup, and she was telling me to continue on, It was really just showing me that God was, looking after me, just because it was for a stranger to give me soup and feed me. It was really touching. And so So with that, in senior year, I got S3, which was like the third highest rank, but I wasn't the BC, battalion commander, and I was fighting for it. And I was like, wow, I worked really hard to be BC and I didn't get it, Then I did a prayer, and this is the second prayer that I ever did where I was like, I'm going to go ask God for something, and I'm just going to see if he's real. And if he doesn't answer me, then it's like, he's not real. He's not there. And it was for three things. I said, look, I want to become battalion commander, but only because I want to serve people, not to get to my head. I just want to show people like, look, I went from 0.2 GPA to the highest rank in school. This should empower you, not disempower you. And these are the three things. Number one is help me become that. Number two, help me get the highest score in AFI, which is annual federal inspection, where the 7 generals from the Army come in there and test the school, how distinguished it is. And so give me the highest score so people can actually listen to me and they'll actually take me seriously. And the third one was, please give me a girlfriend, because right now I'm going to mentally lose it, I think, and literally like month by month, those three things happened to me. Number one, the BC got expelled from the school. And then they were like, who's going to take care of the BC spot? And I just kept volunteering. And then I became BC. The second thing is we got 99.9% on annual federal inspection, which is the highest in 90 years of the school. We were like featured in the newspaper, so that was like, you can't go higher than that 99.9. And the third thing was I had a girlfriend named Michelle, and she used to leave me a voicemail every single morning before I went to school. So it was that time I promised him, I said, I'll never deny that you exist. And yeah, so that was kind of the beginning of like me believing that God was really there.
Yeah. That's awesome. Would you say that was that the biggest lesson, or like what was the biggest lesson you learned from military school?
Biggest lesson would be act as if, it's very similar to this book that I read called Siddhartha, which is all about the story of Buddha, but it's the main thing that I got from that was that if you follow a man long enough, it's only time before you become a very similar man, and you won't even recognize yourself. So the story of him going off there seeking this inspired ascended master, but then coming back to a town and no one recognizing you because you've changed. I said, wow, so I wonder if that really works. And I started emulating. I'm like, how does the BC walk? How does the BC talk? And I was just analyzing him, and I did everything that he did to the T. And because then later on it happened. So if you're listening to this podcast, and if you're like, I always say this too. This is a kind of a thing that I always share, and maybe you've already heard it, but I really believe that a lot of us came from before we were born, we probably knew each other in one way or another. And we were sitting in this amazing King Arthur, table, this round table. And we all sat there together, and we were all leveled. Like no one was higher than you, no one was less than you. We were all just leveled, and which has a symbolic meaning. We're all equal. And we all looked at each other and said, look, I may be coming down to earth first, but I'll inspire you, and then you go keep inspiring others. And we just keep doing that, and it doesn't matter who went there first. It's like, maybe you have to lead the charge, but then I'll follow your lead. And so I feel like sometimes we do this where we look up to people and we think that they're higher than us, but you forget they sat with you at a table and just said, just remember me when I come down there, and I'll be like a light to you, but you have the same light inside of you. And that really kind of was a breakthrough for me. It's like, I never looked at anyone above anymore. I started looking at people like, you just came before me to wake something up that I have inside of me, and I'm just going to now pursue something. And I may even pass you up. And that's the true sign of a good teacher, is that they don't have that ego to say, don't ever pass me up. They're usually like, pass by me. I tell my clients all the time, if you become more successful than me as a practitioner, Godspeed. And I want that for you. It's like, I never want to be the lid. I just wanted to say, hey, surpass me in all areas of my life. It's like, and I hope I was part of your journey. And so I just started doing that. I think that was the biggest lesson I learned.
That's awesome. It was funny that you learned that in a military school, because it's taught in a lot of areas of the actual military. And it's not really I guess it's not really taught, there's not a curriculum about it, but you just learn. You build your ego and your confidence and your training, and then you get a humbling experience. And then you realize that as I'm emulating my leaders, I can learn from their mistakes and my mistakes, and their successes and my successes, and you continually grow. And then you have this mindset of, I know nothing. I'm the master. A true master is always a student, and they'll be the
Absolutely.
first ones to tell you that. they're always learning.
Right.
So that's really cool that you learned that from a military school, because it's what a lot of military guys come to a conclusion.
I didn't even know that. Yeah, I just that's
some guys don't. Some
Yeah.
guys do. You kind of have to read between the lines, I think.
right.
So that's awesome. But so somewhere along the line, you did military school. Like, kind of what happened to that? Kind of bridge that gap. How did you get from military school to energy healing?
Right. So that between those times, I was soul seeking around age 26. So I was in some legal business working from home, and I was failing horribly. And basically, I had this theory in my mind where I'm just like, one of the reasons why you might have a block in life is maybe you have some imbalances. I mean, clients who are hearing my voice would not be like, yeah, man, you've removed a ton of blocks from my life. Sometimes I think it's because there's just things in your body that need to be removed, and you move forward. But one of the things that I've noticed also too is that I feel like a lot of the reasons why we feel stuck in life is because we'll forget about our creator if we become successful. And I've felt that at age 26, there was this, I kept hitting this ceiling, and I was like, I can't make more than this. I can't make more than this. And I just started becoming very negative and skeptical. And I said, maybe this isn't for me, And then, but then I see some guy on stage, and he was talking about like, I don't work on Sundays, And then I was just like, oh, I'm like, well, Catholic Church, I don't know if they teach that. I know Sunday's supposed to be special, but I don't know about not working though, And he was just sharing stuff like, how a rich man can go into heaven, needles. He had this whole metaphor with the camel and the needle's eye and everything like that. And I was just like, man, I really like this guy's philosophy. And later on, I found out that he was a member of the Church of Jesus Christ Latter-day Saints. And then I was about to leave because I was just like, at that point, I was like, man, this guy's a very successful millionaire guy. He's not going to want to talk to me. So I just like walked away. And then my sister knew I wanted to talk to him. My sister was like, he's open, and like, if she didn't do that, I wonder where my life would have been. But she says he's open, like, and I just saw this like perfect gateway to go talk to him. And so I just ran back to him and I said, hey, I realize I love this philosophy, this philosophy. Like, what do you do? Or like, what do you believe in? And blah, blah, blah. And he started asking, he's like, I like your spirit. He's like, I like how you're asking all these questions and you're like really open. You should come over to my house sometime. Here's my business card and let's talk. And that was like kind of that's a whole nother story of basically how I found the church. Is this guy was just this like light from the stage, and I was like listening to him, and I just liked his philosophies, and I just wanted to be like, what's the motor behind that, But between then, honestly, it was a lot of debauchery. Like between military school and also doing business, I was in a band. That's why you see like tattoos on me, and I used to have these like 00 gauges,
Nice.
So I was like,
that was your MTV.
That was like my Kurt Cobain was just like resurrect the band man. And so I came out and I was playing in a band for many years, and just doing odd jobs, like Hollywood Video, like Hollywood Video.
Whoa.
Yeah, I was like a shift leader at Hollywood Video.
I forgot about that.
Yeah. So, so I was working there, and just being in a band and just playing music. Because my mom said something really interesting. She said, "What do you want to do now that you like? I'm so proud of you. Like military school. What do you want to do?" I just want to play music. She's like, "What?" I was like, "Yeah, I just want to play guitar and sing in a band." She's like, all right. So I was like, for many years, just making my own music and, not really becoming too successful. I mean, we played the Roxy, but I mean, it's not like, I didn't ever become famous, whatever. And I would make like 7-minute, 8-minute songs, like just songs would never be on the radio. You know?
Like Pink Floyd stuff.
Yeah. So, and then I took vocal lessons. I took that very seriously. So then I probably recorded like, 11 songs, so I wrote some songs and, but then it was just kind of like, I still wanted the business thing to work because I realized I still wouldn't be able to work from home, just being this band guy working side jobs. So I just decided, I'm like, I need to start working in this home-based business and like live that dream.
Nice. So it sounds like, first off, your sister, she kind of told you to go talk to that guy.
Right.
That was a huge moment for you. Was that before or after you were in the bands?
That was after.
That was after.
Yeah,
okay,
that was
so
after.
You had years of,
just being in a
rock
band,
star
just
life.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
The debauchery, and I too have had some debauchery, and I'm familiar. It's a great time. You actually learn a lot about yourself. I think. and what you really want, you know, because a lot of that, we'll keep calling it debauchery. That's a great name. But a lot of that just gets stale.
Yeah,
over
it does.
time, and it's hollow.
Exactly.
But, you know, a lot of fun memories, I'm sure. A lot of great times. But so she kind of told you to go talk to that guy. I think you almost walked away because you put somebody that sat, you know, to bring up your metaphor earlier,
Right.
somebody that sat in a different life before this life that you sat equal with, and they said, I'll inspire you. And you said, okay.
Right.
And now we're here. And it's so easy to put people, the wrong person,
Oh yeah.
or someone too high up on a pedestal. Look at how society treats athletes and
Sure.
celebrities, and nobody knows like really who they are, like at their core.
Yep.
And then when you do find out, you're usually disappointed. So here you were almost ready to walk away, and your sister said no.
Right.
And it was like that moment where you decided not to, you put yourself equal with that guy.
Right.
So you could go talk to him.
Yeah, I had to. I was desperate. Yeah. It basically, there's a really cool Winston Churchill quote that says, in times of war, truth is so precious that she'll be surrounded by a bodyguard of liars, you know? And it reminds me of like, one of my favorite verses in the Bible is when Jesus is asking the disciples, like, who do people say that I am? You know, and everyone's saying these different hypotheses. You know, some people say you're John the Baptist, you know, come back from the dead. You know, some people say, you're Elijah. You know, and if you notice in those verses, he doesn't say, no, that's wrong. He doesn't actually even give it attention. He just kind of just lets them say what they want to say. And then said, Peter, who do you think that I am? You know, and he says, well, thou art the Son of the living, you're Jesus Christ, the Son of the living God. You know, and he says like, blessed art thou, Simon Bar-Jonah, for flesh and blood hath not told you this, but my Father which is in heaven. And upon this rock I will build my church. And I just remember like how powerful that is that most of my life I've been listening to flesh and blood. You know, flesh and blood is your parents telling you that this is the religion you should do. Flesh and blood is a teacher that says you should study this. It's flesh and blood. That's what we. But he says he didn't say blessed are you for following flesh and blood. He said flesh are you for that you sought revelation from the direct source, and upon that I will build my church. And so I feel like for me, I needed to start finding. Number one is find people that have what you want. You know, I used to surround myself with people that were miserable. Let's all hang out in like a misery swamp, you know? Yeah. And then now I was looking for like, no, I want people with my solutions, not with my problems anymore. And this was a man who had a spiritual solution. And I was just like, I need to be around him and feel uncomfortable around him until I can feel comfortable around him in the future. And it just, I feel like most people don't want to feel uncomfortable around someone, but it's the only way you'll grow. It's the only way.
It is.
So that's kind of one of the things that's like, that's the thing that working from home taught me, is that all success is based outside of the comfort zone. Just it's what it taught me. And like, I remember giving a magazine to somebody at Starbucks who was walking in with a suit. You know how intimidating it is? First of all, that person does not want to get handed a magazine at Starbucks, but we were just recruiting, you know, it was like, this is how you recruit for the company. So I'll just be, so my sister and I would be like, are you going to talk to him? Or are you going to talk? Okay. You know, it's like, that's what we were doing, like literally from like sometimes 10 a.m. to 4 p.m., just like wondering who we're going to give this magazine to. We would stop at a gas station and be, hey, have you seen this magazine before? Like so many years of that. It's like, I had to get out of my comfort zone. And so that's one thing is I wanted to associate with people that were more successful than me, find more ways to get out of your comfort zone. And and you buy someone's opinion, you buy their lifestyle. That's really what it is.
Totally. Absolutely. That's really cool that you said that. And a lot of military guys, they don't maybe word this the same way I do, but I've come to the conclusion that our discomfort, those growing moments, like that's such a sacred moment in your life. Like if you put yourself in a discomfort, if you choose that path, then to grow, like that's like extremely sacred to an individual.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's what makes you into what you need to become for your family or for you or for, you know, for your own mental health, everything like that.
Right.
So how did you get into energy healing?
So with energy healing, and by the way, just to add on top of what you just said, I remember there's the root word of passion. Because a lot of people, whenever they think of passion, it has to be always exciting and like every day is an amazing day. It's like, I'm in my passion, you know? But passion actually comes from sacred suffering is really what it is, you know? So and it comes from the passion of Christ is what are you willing to suffer for that's sacred to you? That's really your passion, you see? So if you're having ups and downs right now, whoever's listening to me, if you're having ups and downs in business, or if you're having ups and downs in your relationship or whatever, is that relationship sacred to you? Or is that business sacred to you? Then you're willing to suffer through it so that you can make it better with your presence in it. And I think a lot of people just think that passion is all about high, enticing excitement and elation, but that's where you'll be let down. At every single area that you move to, you'll be let down because there's no for sure elation in this world, like where you stay there. You don't, unless you're one of those people wearing an orange monk clothing and you just stay in high enlightenment in those Tibetan towers. Yeah. But even then, it's like, you don't have a family. You don't know the real blessing of having a family, you know, and maybe finding your mission and gift in life. You don't. You're just sitting there meditating. So there's like you're cutting yourself off from like true joy of a man or a woman. Sure. So
you just described like tons of stuff just flooded in my mind when you described that. Like that's why. So we use a weird example, but Mal, she's on the other end of this. But if Mal and I argue, and we like work through it, I feel like excited, or I feel because it's like, it's sacred to me, you know, because we've worked through something or we are passionate about something and we can talk. It's exciting. And like, if I have misagreement or disagreements with people at work where I'm passionate about, you know, earning a living, I finally found a company that did that. You know, everyone, it sounds like you found your path too. But like, if I have tension with somebody, I kind of get excited about that because it's just what professionals do. We would call it professional tension when I was in a combat team. And you just described, it's like that sacred suffering. You're both wanting the same thing.
Yeah.
And you're just arguing about how it's going to be done. Or you're at odds about something because of that passion.
Right.
It's really what it is.
It is,
It's suffering.
Right.
I'm so mad at this person. I'm so mad at this process or this hump that we can't get over.
Right.
And I'm frustrated with that guy and this gal and this person because we can't get over this hump and they think it this way and I think that, like, that's what that is.
Right.
It's passion. And we should all be like, kind of smiling like this, like, hey, we're onto something here. Let's just communicate better, right?
Exactly.
And then we can get there.
And what it is too is, I think Jordan Peterson talks about that in regards to like he having a wife to contend with, that you're
a contender,
that you grow through the contending, you know. And what's interesting is, I remember I spoke to a stake president once, and I used to extract gold from people really quickly just by saying, hey, if you were like 15 years old and you saw yourself in a diner and you only had 3 minutes to tell them something, you know, what would you say if you went back in time? And whatever those 3 minutes are, it's like you're basically taking 30 years, 40, 50 years of wisdom, and you're putting it in a small, like little tidbit, that a little hard drive, and you just kind of put it inside yourself. You don't have to go through those 30 years to get that wisdom that person acquired. So that's what I would say to someone. I remember he said, I'm like, what would you tell yourself? He says, I would focus more on not who is right, but what God thinks is right. And I remember going like, that's really powerful. So I always look at relationships like a triangle, you know, and it's like, and it's interesting because in energy healing sessions, it's almost like when you're connecting with someone, it's like you're sending like a telephone kind of cord to someone. So it's like you're courting with someone in some ways, you know? And, but when you're asking for help in the beginning, when like I'm talking to like say a Muslim person and we don't even, you know, we're just praying to something up higher together. We're taking 10 seconds because we're doing another connection up higher. So there is a triangle that happens during a session where they're sending a chord and I'm sending a chord, and now there's these chords happening. And that's really how it all works. It's like really, it's just like tapping into something higher that understands healing is part of our DNA. And so I think like that's the way relationships work too. Like contending is great, but I like to contend while looking up at something that maybe knows the greatest way to handle a situation through celestial eyes instead of like my temporal eyes, you know?
Right. That's a good point. I guess the contending or the contention is just a sign that you're onto something.
Right.
It doesn't mean you should be in that conflicting all the time. It just means, we're onto something here. But yeah, that's awesome. So you were talking about chords and that energy. You kind of just touched on it there, but how did you go from that guy, debauchery, you met this dude, you became a member of the LDS faith, and then how did you get to this, talking about energy healing?
So one of the things is around 35 years old, around there, I was just kind of sick and tired of being sick and tired, and I was looking for another self-development book. So my mentor said, if you're stuck in life, there's probably a book waiting for you. So in my mind, I'm like, there's another book waiting for me. I feel stuck,
That's really
and so then I'd go on Amazon, and then just, the algorithm was really working for me. And then the emotion code showed up, and I'm like, oh, this is
right above you
right there. Yeah. The emotion code. So I said, I need to look into this. And, I read it, and I remember going like, if this kind of contradicts my Christian faith, I may put this down, because technically it was my first energy healing book I've ever read, but like, I'm not willing to sacrifice my soul, in order to find a technique of some sort, so I was very wary when I read it. And, what's interesting is I picked up the book and dropped the book like over 8 to 10 times, which a lot of people, when they look at me and they're like, wait, Emanuel, you made 400 videos on YouTube about the emotion code, body code. You're the last person I would think would pick up and drop the book 10 times, but it's because I had a heart wall. So I had this wall around my heart, and I felt numb. So I make a joke that Dr. Brad could have walked into a room and slapped my face and said, you're going to be one of the great energy healers, and I would have been like, who are you and where'd you come from and why are you in my room? Because I didn't feel much, I was in a bomb shelter still, and so my mission doesn't look attractive when you're looking from the inside of a bomb shelter, it just, everything looks dark and murky. But once I started clearing my heart wall, the attraction to the book started, like the books became lighter to me. And then when I was looking at the web series on how to become a practitioner, it was like I would stay up till 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning, and I would just be like obsessed now. I'm like, there's something here. And so that's when I kind of knew like there's something here, but I had to remove my heart wall first.
That's really cool. So like I grew up a member of the LDS faith. I'm currently not practicing, but I still identify as that, and I still love the gospel. So I still understand what it's like to be that. But how does that work? Like, how does that go? It doesn't contradict any of your Christian beliefs? Great
question, and probably the greatest question asked so far, because a lot of people are wondering about that. And I also want to speak out to like Christian faiths as well. Is that I feel like what people are not ready to believe in is that, first of all, let's start from the beginning. Let's start with miracles, right? Energy healing is not a miracle. Okay, so and Christians believe when you're doing something that's amazing, they automatically put it under subtitle of this must be a miracle, which means you're trying to do things that God would do for us directly or through the priesthood of the church, and so that's the first misconception, is anything that's like, wow, you like healed it, like the arm healed itself, when technically the immune system is what really healed it, then you automatically want to jump to the conclusion that this is you're robbing the spotlight off of priesthood, that's right. So that's one. The next thing I want to say is that,
well, then I guess if that was the verdict, then like same thing, ibuprofen, any modern medicine is robbing the same thing. That's the
exactly. Yeah, absolutely.
So would you say that energy healing, it's not like people, because when I first met you and I thought this stuff, and like speaking honestly, man, like I'm a very practical guy. I like to use logic.
Sure.
But I can't deny a lot of like spiritual experiences that I've had. In very non-religious areas of my life too, very violent areas of life, from the jobs I had and things like that in the military. And I think is it safe to say that energy healing is like a form of technology?
Sure. I would even say, it's just like a tool we use. And in fact, like for example, doctors use scalpels to do surgery, right? They're not using air. They have to use a tool, Right. Same thing with energy healing. It's just a tool. It's almost like finding out the body's own self mechanisms of how you, we're smart enough to have a person who creates a car to have a tune-up system. But somehow we think in our egotistical minds that God wouldn't put a tune-up system for the human body. So the human, we have like a diagrams and like how we work and how we produce emotions, So it's almost like the purest form, the purest scalpel that we could use is to look into the body and be like, okay, so there's ways to manipulate the energy that we are, that God created us to be, these systems, he created these systems. So isn't there a systematic way to tamper with the body to get it back to where it is, right? Or we can go and follow a big mafia-oriented big pharma and say that take pills, which technically is a Band-Aid, for long-term horrible results of liver issues, kidney issues, and your body's literally falling apart. It's your choice. You can choose. Either you go through that way, but do you want a Band-Aid, or do you really want to just go back to the same system that God created you and say, what do I need to turn up? What do I need to release? What do I need to remove? What do I need to tune up? So then just it heals itself. The body heals itself. And I think also too, there's some Christian faiths that they believe all you need to know is the Bible. Like don't read any other book. Don't read self-development book. Don't read any energy healing books. All the answers are in the Bible. But then it's like, why do you go to school and why do you go to college? It's like there's so much. Like why do you go to trade school? It's like you can't become an engineer off the Bible. You can't. Yeah. So the Bible has its respective area where it's supposed to assist the spirit to be fed. But when it comes to like technically going out into the world and mastering a technique of some sort, you have to look outside. That's why we have libraries, and so I just feel like, again, the people that really ruined it for us, I feel like, in my opinion, energy healing, are the 10% fanatical people that we don't like in church. It's the 10% of people that are overly judgmental. They go, oh, energy healing is the source. We don't need God. We don't need the priesthood. It's like those people, those loud, obnoxious, fanatical people ruined it for the 90% of people that say, no, energy healing has its place. Church has its place. God has his place. The priesthood had its place. We had our compartments until the 10% spoke too loud.
Yeah. So to me, because I'm in an interesting spot, and we've had some lengthy conversations before where, because I'm outside of a religion and I can set aside like a certain thought pattern and think kind of more freely, I think.
Sure.
I hope so. But I've tried to like set myself in their shoes on how I used to think,
right,
and how I know like my parents think, or like how they, other people I know that are, so dug into a religion or a train of thought. And I can't.
We're talking about the cultural.
Yeah, the culture.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then it's like, then you have the opposite. You're saying there's like energy healers that are like, we don't need God because we have energy healing.
Right.
And then to me, I've looked at both.
Oh yeah.
And I've looked at like a staunch religious person who's like, that's blasphemy. That's witchcraft. And then someone's like, we don't need God. Like that's the two extremes.
Yeah.
And to me, what you have talked about and what I've bumped into, because when I'm meeting you and getting you involved with this, us doing your podcast, like you kind of set me on a journey inadvertently. And the further down this journey I go, the more it supports the fact that there is a God.
Right.
It leans towards that. If you can analyze everything and look at it.
Yeah.
Like everything is frequency, right?
Right.
Emotions we feel, everything, our whole body is like an antenna for emotion and frequency. That's why we have a soul.
Right.
Like if you believe we have a soul, this is all part of it, right?
Right.
And so do you have a hard time, or do people push back on you because it's newer, or like what's your biggest, like if I'm a member of the church and I'm like, what's your biggest pushback that I give?
The biggest pushback is cultural programming is what they've learned. And we have something in our instinct DNA where we would love to just please our parents. That's instinctively in all of us. Like we have something where it's like, I just want to make my dad proud, make my mom proud. So if they teach you certain things for a very long period of time, and some new person outside of that tribe says something new to you, it's hard to be able to insert something new, And I think But however, though, I do have to admit that somebody who actually does spiritual work, like there's a term where it says, there's so much truth everywhere. It's like a broken glass, and it's just like to say that one church monopolizes truth that's blasphemy in itself. But there's glass everywhere. There's glass in tools. There's glass in modalities. There's glass in other faiths. There's glass in religion. There's just glass everywhere. I'm not a church seeker. I'm a glass seeker.
Shards.
I'm just looking for the shards.
Shards of truth.
Yeah, and even Joseph Smith, and you can say anyone can say whatever they want about him, but he's the type of person that would go into a trash can. Like the Apocrypha, obviously we don't consider that the main canon of our church, because it's like
the Jewish.
No, it's basically like lots of different people writing after Jesus passed away. It's just kind of like later, the later gospels, like the Gospel of Mary Magdalene. There's just different stuff going on there. But he's the type of guy that would go in there and he would find it and he would make a statement that say, some of this is true. And I was willing to go in there to find it, to extract it.
Right.
And so I admire that. I'm a person that's like, he's willing to go to the bottom of a trash can to find that amazing sandwich that lies below there that no one would find because you're too scared of the trash that's in there. Then you miss out on life because, like I said, like in times of war.
Diamond in the rough, right?
The diamond in the rough. Winston Churchill said in times of war, I'm going to say this, in times of spiritual war, that truth will be well attended by a bodyguard of liars. So you have to move the bodyguard of liars away to find the truth and extract it. It's so precious. Yeah. And so I don't expect it to be so on the streets right there. I do expect I have to go through a different, if I go to another church, I'll go in there and I'll find their truth in there. I'm like, wow, that's powerful extraction, and like, what other truths do you have in there? Oh, that's good. I'm like, I extract it. And I won't be like, oh, all you guys are all false. It's like, we're more gray than we think, in my opinion. Like, we have to stop thinking everything is white and black. We love duality, but there's a lot of gray. And in the gray, there's white. And I'm willing to go in the gray to find the white. But yeah, it all takes, discernment and praying. Does this resonate with me and things like that? But before I was a member of the church, I was a truth seeker. And now, more than ever, I am still a truth seeker. It's something that it's like my food, and so, but my main, like a compass, I love how S. Michael Wilcox says it. He dips into other faiths like Eastern religion to clarify things about, Christianism and things like that. So he'll put his compass leg out, but his main, I'm trying to remember, there's a term for it. It's like the core leg stays in the church. But his other compass leg tries to reach as far as it can to like find any truth it can, but his core leg doesn't move. Mm-hmm. I can fully relate to that. It's like my core leg is not moving anywhere, and my main core beliefs won't move. But there's so much to learn out there,
Right. And from my experience, I grew up in that culture, right?
Yeah.
Of LDS or Mormonism or whatever that people want to label it as. I grew up in that, and I feel like just growing up in that culture, let me clarify here. It's not the gospel of Jesus Christ that limits your thinking.
Right.
It's the culture. And sometimes I think an organized religion, because they kind of bounce, they're both sides of the ping pong table bouncing the ball back and forth, is a religion shapes the culture. And then sometimes a culture can shape its religion, right?
Right.
And so if that was what was limiting to me as a person, is I could not go and find those diamonds in the rough, or I couldn't experience the things I wanted to experience to grow. And so I left that culture.
Sure.
And that's the beautiful thing about it. And you have done the opposite.
Yeah.
You were seeking with this vast, you needed a little bit more of a box or a culture to play ping pong with. You needed an anchor, whereas I had the anchor. But I never left. We're still tethered to the same anchor.
Sure,
we just come to different conclusions.
Yeah, and it's interesting too that like I found it very fascinating that when I was reading the book, The Emotion Code, he started mentioning things like intelligences. I'm like, that's Doctrine and Covenants talk in there, and he mentions Jesus Christ in there quite a bit. I'm like, pretty ballsy to do this in the Emotion Code book. And I found out later, I didn't know Dr. Brad was a member of the church until later on, until I read the book fully. And then I Googled him and I was like, yeah, he's a member of the church. All right. And then I was like, that's so fascinating that my first energy healing book, the founder is from the church. And, you know, he, it really opened up my faith even more. Cause I'm like, wow, it's like God will find any way through any vessel to help people. In fact, I know Truman G. Madsen once shared that every 600 years, there's like a light that comes in the earth, and that kind of, it shakes up the whole, the darkness of the world. Like, you know, Joan of Arc, you know, and that's like St. Francis of Assisi, you know, Joseph Smith. It's like, there's someone that comes out that just tries to raise the frequency of this earth. Mm-hmm. And it's interesting that it's like God will use St. Francis to get his light out there. Again, our church doesn't have a monopoly on amazing people that are used by God, like, you know? And so I look at people like Dr. Brad, like he's just one of the many vessels that said, hey, we need help down here. We're like emotionally dying.
Yes.
And then this amazing thing came to him, and he has no problem saying that, you know, the Savior communicated with him and gave some information. Again, he's not going to become a prophet with this information. He's just there to just serve the masses, serve the whole world. He doesn't care who he helps. He just wants to help everyone. Ironically, my even my sister's CEO of Solex, you know, he also went on a mission himself. The coincidence of my wife doing something, like something came to her like after she got certified as a body code emotion code practitioner, and it was a frequency machine that sends frequencies to people that they would send up to astronauts up in space to sustain them, like this amazing technology. The CEO is someone that's like went on a mission, and then I went to Dr. Brad, and it's like these two people that happen to be of the same core faith are finding ways to just change the frequency of the earth. I don't find that a coincidence one bit.
I don't either.
Yeah.
I don't either.
So it's just kind of I'm in a very kind of state of awe about it, that I'm like, he could have been, you know, this religion, this guy could have been a Buddhist, but the ironically that my wife and I both brought mentors that are both from the church, and we're actually helping people, like by their fruits you shall know them. It's like emotion code, body code. I mean, I know you got a session done from me.
Yeah.
And, I was nervous because I was like, I thought, you know, this guy, you know, looks like he came out of a Robin Hood movie. And, I just don't think, you know, he's about to shoot an arrow in my head. Like, I don't know if, you know, but I mean, if you want to share, like, how was your first experience with the?
Well, I think my life experiences led me up to do this kind of things. You have to start realizing that, like, the science is here on the earth, like the knowledge is here, and you know, you don't need to. A prophet and a practitioner are two different things, and I had to go through a whole process to even be open-minded enough to hear this. Just like somebody joining a religion has to go through a whole process, and usually has to go through some pretty low valleys and some high peaks to get to a conclusion about, hey, maybe I need God in my life. And then they find a path that God leads them to, right? Same thing, like you did. And so I had this like step, it's just the synchronicity of everything happening. And then, and then all of a sudden there's a practitioner at my house on a podcast for one of our clients. And I had to just like, my original like skepticism bubbled up. And I was like, man. But then started talking to you, started hearing about it, started watching you do your thing. And just through some simple laws of logic and, you know, discussion, questioning, you know, and then the one thing I couldn't pin on was, because let me back up. I was trained by our government to be observant of these things. And I know a lot of there's a lot of people that like magicians or like fortune tellers kind of stuff. And it's just simple laws of deduction, you know, lines of questioning that lead you to a certain answer, or extrapolating information from somebody by deducing, you know, oh, you're stuff
like language gymnastics to be able to get certain answers,
to make people comfortable, get them talking. So then you can throw some, you know, prophecy on them. Right. So I was kind of like open I'm like, all right, let's see what happens. But there was none of that. You just asked some basic questioning, and then it was just like, it was so vague. Like, there's no way, it could have been like staged or prepped. It was just like, hey, I think some stuff like, and you were wrong a couple times, and then you were like, oh, and then we start thinking about it, and like, oh, is this? So I was very pleased with the situation, and I was like, I think you were working on my ankle.
Yeah.
I had some, just for like weeks, my ankle like was just, I don't remember twisting it. I don't remember anything. It was just kind of locking up on me, sharp pain, stuff like that, just muscle tension. And like within 2 days after you worked on me, it was gone. And like, it's weird. And it was there for like a month. So maybe it was luck. Maybe, doubt it.
Yeah.
I seriously doubt it now.
Well, the reason why, it's lucky that you were in the room and we were just hanging
Sure.
out. But is that luck though? And that's what I'm trying to tell you is that earlier on is like coincidence is God's way of staying anonymous. I say that all the time.
Yeah, that's a great saying.
And I really feel like that whole thing with like, when the student is ready, the teacher will appear. And sometimes what people don't think about is that the student might be battered and torn and going through something, and we can still hear from the ground when we're being like pulverized. Like, cause that was me, you see, like I didn't get into the emotion code with a victorious stance. Like I wasn't winning in life. I was losing everything. But there's something beautiful about that you can still listen when you're on the cement bleeding. That you're still willing to listen, like similar to the show The Chosen.
Mm-hmm.
The man who couldn't walk, who was a paraplegic, like he stayed there still near the well, knowing darn well that he may never get to it, and that people are going to stomp on him, whatever. Jesus knew that though, that he was showing a sign of faith just staying there, and I feel like we stay in the area. I believe that people come to us when we're ready to take our lives to the next level, but the only person that would know that would be God. Like, it's like some of these people, they just come out of nowhere, and you think, did you come out of nowhere, or were you like an answer from like a prayer in my heart?
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like we pray more than we think we do. We pray more in our heart than we don't have to get down on our knees to pray. As much as like there are people that are asking questions, God, blah, 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 and they're just saying in their heart, that's a prayer. And you don't think he's listening, and you don't think he's going to bring somebody to help you out. And I really believe he'll always come. One of my favorite talks of all time is the God we worship. I think it was like praying to the God we worship, or maybe it was like praying to a fourth watch God. It was something like that. It's my favorite go-to whenever I'm going through hard times. What it is the philosophy of the fourth watch, which in the Roman calendar is between 3 a.m. to 6 a.m. And that Jesus was like many football fields away from the people that were out in the they were out in the ocean. They're in
this fisherman boat.
The fisherman boat. Yeah, they were out there, not the ocean, but they were all out there and just kind of just it's really bad out there. But one of the writers said that Jesus saw them from afar off. It's like, why did the writer say that? He's football fields away, but why did one person say he was watching from afar off? And I think there's some amazing meaning to that. Like, we're struggling and toiling, and we think he's not there, but the whole time he's just watching. And then he says there's wisdom behind the toiling. It's strengthening your arms. He's seeing how much you can grow and expand. But then, like, when it's too much, he comes to the fourth watch, and he comes to you when you're just like, I know enough is enough, and I'm here now. And I've had many moments in my life where it's just like, I feel like I'm on the eighth watch, and I'm just like, God, where are you? But he shows up in the fourth watch, and it's after, Lehi walks, or I don't know if it's like Nephi walks in the darkness for a while, and then boom, the light shows up. It's like, or somebody grabs his hand and says, come this way,
Yeah.
or getting encumbered by a negative entity around you, and then a vision of light comes to you. It's like there's always the darkness before the light shows up. So if you understand that, then you don't get so sad about, is God really listening? It's number one, he's afar off. And number two, you're not in the fourth watch yet. There's growing that needs to happen, but he's in his mind's expectation. He's going to show up and still the waters for you.
Yeah.
You know?
And I think a lot of members of the church would call that the Holy Ghost, right? Or the light of Christ, all that stuff. I just had a thought that came to me. I wanted to share with you real quick. But you know how you have in the Godhead, you have God the Father, his Son, Jesus Christ, and the Holy Ghost. There's never a name given to the Holy Ghost. We don't know anything about his form or image or what. It's like if you could put the pictures, like there's a picture of him above me, right? And then if you ever played Where in the World is Carmen Sandiego? There's
right.
that like silhouette with a question mark.
Sure.
That's the Holy Ghost. I just kind of had a thought. I think the Holy Ghost is you, is us, is me. It's your soul. That's the Holy Ghost to me. That's what's going to speak to you. That's the thing that will emanate a frequency, that will emanate energy and emotion for you to feel the Spirit. It only comes if your soul is paying attention. It's your soul. There is no the Holy Ghost. It's in you. It's in me, and it's in you. It's in us. That's how I kind of interpret it. And I've had thoughts like that for a while, and it just materialized for me now in this to be verbalized. And so I think a lot of people would think that's blasphemous or whatever, but it's your divinity is what the Holy Ghost is. It's that thing that's pulling you towards the path that you need to go on. It's that thing. It's
right. I see what you're saying.
Still small voice.
No,
right? It's never a person. It's never.
Right.
It's his name's not Tom.
Right.
You know, like
well, and you bring up some good points, and I think, like I said, for me, Joseph Smith said that a man was never damned for believing too much, right? And that and what's interesting though is that for me, I know that the Holy Ghost, they say, according to our teachings, is a man with no body, right? So it's male, it's masculine, but at some point in the future, when he fulfills his mission, he will acquire his body, which is so that's what Joseph Smith said. But what's really interesting is that I love the whole flashlight, which you've probably heard, the flashlight and the whole sun interpretation of anybody in the world has access to receive truth by asking the Holy Ghost if it's true or not. If something is true or not, then they can it's like a flashlight on them. It's not a full-on sunbeam to you, or you just, but just a flashlight, like a glimpse of okay, this is true. That's the only way that converts are made, is it's the flashlight on a convert. But then when you acquire the Holy Ghost, it's like the sun comes out, and it's like you can have it within you, and it's not the Spirit that's in you, it's the influence of the Spirit that's there. That's a big difference. It's like a campfire. It's not the campfire can't be everywhere, but everyone around the campfire can feel the influence of the fire. It's kind of like the same thing. But I think I love what Joseph Smith said. Is he says that there's so many books out there in the whole entire world. He's like, I just want to have one book, and it's the Holy Ghost, and it tells me the truth of all things, and I choose to associate with this book the most. And that was a very powerful thing that people. Another sort of not trick, but I would say something very similar to the Holy Ghost that we have in our bodies. I'm not going to say it's anywhere near the Holy Ghost. It's just muscle testing, and Dr. David Hawkins talks about how muscle testing is kind of like the first time where we can actually see if something is true or not by testing the body, if it's real. If you have lots of people do sort of a blindfold study and everyone's testing positive or negative, then it's kind of a way of showing what is truth. Like you make a statement, how high calibration is that statement? How high a frequency is it? If I tested you for Mother Teresa, you would test strong. Even if you speak ill about Mother Teresa, you would still be strong, because the energy of that name and what that person did actually strengthens your body. Now, if you said Adolf Hitler, your arm would go weak because of the life that he lived. So names, statements, beliefs have a certain frequency number to it, and they can be muscle tested by multiple people, up to 50 to 100 people, and they'll all muscle test the same number of what that frequency is. So it gets really interesting, because then now you can ask, that's how I loved what preconception did for me, it changed my life. When I found out, I'm like, wait a minute, preconception trapped emotions, what are those? And I remember asking Brad to tell me what it is. But the fact that I can go up to an atheist and someone agnostic and just say, well, let's go back to the atheist. What were you doing before you were born? See, that question is already troubling to the atheist. It's like, what was I doing before I was born? What? And then I would say, were you with God working on your gifts and talents? And then their arm would be strong. See, involuntary, their arm would be strong, which their spirit or their subconscious recognizes truth when it hears it, and it can't deny it. So so basically we are living in a lie detector test. And whatever we propose to the body will tell you if it's true or not. So it goes beyond your culture, and it goes beyond your religion, beyond your tribes, because it doesn't have any distinction. It just goes, I know what truth is and what not truth is. I don't care what religion it is or whatever. So with that one, you can say, what were you doing before you were born? And 100% of people will say, I was with God, working on my gifts and talents, and everyone would test positive on that. And then another cool kind of thing that Dr. Brad learned is that we all have these little soul missions. Like before we were born, the reason why we have such an affinity for family is that we were helping out, let's say your great-great-great-grandfather, and you were kind of like a spirit, like hanging out with your great-great-great-grandfather in World War II or something like that. Maybe you were assisting him from time to time there. You don't remember it because there's a veil over your mind. But if we were to kind of rip that off, you'll remember how many people you helped in your ancestral line. You can muscle test that. Did I ever have a soul mission before I was even born helping out family members? And your arm would be strong. So you wonder why, like, people are very valiant now more than before. How many missions were you on before you came to this time in 2000, in 1981? As you probably helped a lot of people. You're not this little baby coming out like, I'm not unexperienced with life. No, you've seen some stuff. You just don't remember it, but it helped you progress. And but sometimes in an emotion code, body code session, you might have absorbed an emotion. Let's say your great-great-grandfather had panic and you were around him as a spirit body, you would absorb his panic. And for some reason you have anxiety when you're 8 or 9 years old and you have no idea. So you have to remove that anxiety that you probably absorbed from your great-great-great-grandfather. So again, what does that make you believe in? God even more, in my opinion. It's like, wow, God is really doing something with families over there. And he really cares about our gifts and talents. So I need to kind of look into that, not just kind of sit around thinking that I'm just a regular guy and I have no gifts and talents. It's like if your own body that doesn't care where you came from is muscle testing that you were in the presence of him and that you were having soul missions, you're way more powerful than you think you are, And so
that's awesome, man. Like I've been saying stuff like that for years to my family because they don't understand why I've left the group think behind.
Right.
And it's really kind of contradicting. You mentioned prayer earlier. I think it's extremely petty when people pray to like find their car keys,
right,
or pray to help me like with a test or something, but then they don't. I think it's petty to put prayer out there without action behind it.
Sure.
Right. And it's like, I think that's petty.
Right.
And I think if you're truly a son or daughter of God, who is the most high being in the world, obviously prayer is a necessary thing. But if you remember that, then you look at prayer completely different and you start praying for the strength or the ability to stay strong or a positive attitude to push through this thing because God, I know I can do this. I'm your son. I'm your daughter.
Right.
So please give me the wherewithal to learn as much as possible instead of saying, please help me pass my test.
Right.
Please help me learn the necessary lesson.
Right.
And if I didn't prepare enough,
right,
I'm open to go back to square one.
And here's the thing too. I remember I worked at Siegel Books when I was a convert. Very dangerous thing to put me in Siegel Books, by the way, because I would eat ramen and I'd be reading all these LDS books and just starving basically. But I was starving like to read more about doctrine, And one of the things one of the reasons why Twilight was taken out of Siegel Books is because of me, because I was seeing too many people buy it, and then I would go out of my comfort zone and say, hey, by the way, have you read Matthew or John? The synoptic gospels, They're like, no. Like, what is that? I'm like, New Testament. Like, no. I'm like, okay, cool. So put that book back and, get like a New Testament book, because the vampire in Twilight didn't do an atonement for you. Jesus did, and I know it was kind of like, it sounded kind of harsh, but really what I was trying to tell them is that in the Bible, two things that I want to add to what you just said, that how powerful you are, is two things. One, it's all about relationship. And when Jesus was on the cross, see, if you don't read the New Testament, you don't see the little things that were just like, wait, why did he say it? When did he say it? And why did he say it that way? See, it's like, you can't just read it and just kind of be like, okay, I read my 10 verses. I don't do that. I'm a context maniac. I go, why did he say it? Wait, was that Jewish culture? Is that why he said it? It's like, what did it mean to the rabbis who heard this? I'm that kind of analyzer, but you get so much more out of the scriptures when you read it, because we're reading it like in a 20th century goggles,
right?
Like, we're not Jewish, so you have to understand Jesus was a Jew, so you have to read from some Jewish lens first of all, and you understand, like, okay, there's a reason why he said these words when he put clay on someone's eyes. See, to a regular person, even Christian, I would say it's a little too much, But then if you look at it from a Jewish angle, you might look at it very differently. Like, wait, there's symbolism behind what he did. But the two things that come to my mind to show you how special we are is the high priest prayer in the Last Supper. So he did that prayer, and the whole prayer is about one thing. It's like, this is the last prayer that he's having with the apostles, but he might as well have done a last prayer with us, as he said that, God, please give them the same relationship that you and I had together while I was here. That's it. If you look at if you really read it, that's what it's about. It's just like, that same way that I spoke to you, the same way you spoke to me. It's like, can you give it to them? That's all it was.
Yeah.
And it's powerful. It's like that's his last magnum opus prayer. And so that shows how special we are. It's like he wanted to put us to have the same exact, not like he's better than us, just the same exact relationship. Number two, when he was on the cross, he said, Eloi, Eloi, lama sabachthani, which means, my God, why hast thou forsaken me? But he's saying daddy, he's not saying father anymore. So there's moments where it shows like, wait, what term of endearment, what type of relationship do you have that when you're suffering, you're calling for daddy, you're not calling for father? And some of us, because we put father way up there, again, kind of like we forget the round table theory, that we don't really look at it like he actually raised us. Like we don't figuratively, mentally see the picture in our mind. Mm-hmm. So then we kind of withhold the love that we can actually give if we knew how close we were before.
Right.
Like if I were to take someone and just put my hand in his eyes and just show him how he was being raised by Heavenly Father for like 30 seconds, he would never be the same. Never. Yeah. And but I'm saying, but look at these interesting things. It's like Jesus was already showing the way. He was saying daddy while he was suffering. And his last prayer was like, I don't want them to have if there's anything that I've ever prayed about, just let them be like the way we were talking and the way that we had our relationship. That exact one, can you duplicate it with these men?
Dude, that's interesting. I've never heard that before.
Yeah. And it's just like I said, for me, it's like I've read the New Testament dozens and dozens of times in the church where, we mainly focus on the Book of Mormon, different religions or the different books. But when you read the New Testament from different eyes and you read commentary, it's fascinating what Jesus did. In fact, I was going to share with you my favorite verse that I think if you're somebody who is in the services community, that you're providing any type of service, the one where Lazarus was dead and just all the synchronicities that are happening behind that. So he waits and he comes to these two women, Mary and basically Mary and they were both kind of just I think it was both Marys. They were both just crying, saying like, if you were here, he would have still been alive. And but see, they don't know the backstory of why he waited so long. See, the reason why he waited so long is because Jewish mysticism said that the spirit was lingering around the body for about 3 days when someone dies. So he had to wait a little bit longer so that when he came and he did a miracle, they wouldn't claim that it was just, oh, well, he just kind of pushed the spirit back in the body. It's like, no, he literally brought him back from the dead. Like the spirit was gone and he brought Lazarus all the way back in. So he purposefully waited, which kind of teaches you like, there is a purpose behind his waiting. I
love stuff like that.
Yeah. So then he waits, and then he comes there, and then here's my favorite part is like, they're all crying to him, and he already knows what he's doing there. He knows what his mission is right at that moment, which is what? To raise Lazarus from the dead. Like he knew in his mind, he's like, this is going to happen. What he didn't know was that these women would be, the way they'd be crying to him. And so my favorite scripture is he wept. So we have a God that we worship, that even though he knows the outcome, even though he knows he's doing something in the back end that we don't understand the wisdom behind it, he still takes the time to cry with two women, even though his next thing was like, I'm going to raise him up from the dead. Yeah. For me, that's my favorite dichotomy of like the way that we're all Marys. We're all crying to God. Like, if you would have been here sooner, my daughter wouldn't have been dead. Or if you wouldn't come here sooner, I would have had that job, you know? And it's just like, and he comes and he's like, there's a reason why I'm late. And you don't know it yet. But guess what? I will mourn with you. Like, you know, that's literally the condescension of God, is just a God that comes down and mourns with women. It's powerful, you know, and in a patriarchal society, to feel so much empathy for women. There's a really great quote that says, feel so much compassion for other people that you can taste salt in your mouth. And that's what he had. He had that real empathy. And then after he cried with them and they were done, he says, I'm going to go raise him from the dead now. Yeah. It's one of my favorite verses in scripture.
That's interesting. It's there's so much like missing context that you kind of have to dig for sometimes. If you're just casually reading this holy writ, you're going to miss it. And I feel like a lot of people do that too with the Book of Mormon.
Sure.
Right, when they misjudge the character of a certain person because we grew up with an image of them, and they were being so thing, and we get the, you know, the primary or the seminary school answers that are just kind of regurgitated over and over again. One of my favorite ones is like Captain Moroni. I think I shared this with you last time. Like Captain Moroni. Oh, he was Captain Moroni. Oh, he was the most righteous guy. He was the leader of the armies at age 16. Wow. Yeah. It's like, well, do you know what that entails? Right. Like, what does that mean? And like dive into it deeper. Who was the armies? Well, it usually was criminals and conscripts, people that were down on their luck looking for a free sack of flour in exchange for service so their family could have food, right? Right. And you being in a military school and me serving in the military, we know that military members are not the most, they're crude. When they're not being rigid and disciplined.
I mean, you seem like a nice guy.
Yeah, no, I'm not. I tell Mal all the time, I'm a mean person. But you can be, I think being a nice guy in today's world won't get you anywhere. I think being a monster, like Jordan Peterson says, and then learning how to have empathy and love. And that's why I like your platform, HEAL, have empathy and love. It's a great little acronym. Yeah. But, I think that's kind of who Captain Moroni was. He was around these people, like the scum of society sometimes joined the military.
Absolutely.
You know, and then he's at the age of 16, he's strong enough to run someone through with a sword and kill them. Yep. And like, you don't think he maybe said some cuss words every now and then to speak the language of those people? Like when I was told, did you go on a mission?
No, I got baptized too late.
Right. But when you're in the MTC, the Missionary Training Center, they always say SYL, it means speak your language. Right. And I would always joke, I'm like, if I spoke the language of the Marines, I'd get kicked out of here. Oh yeah. But when I was with Marines, and you're leading a fire team of combat hardened Marines or guys who come from gangs or from all over walks of life, like you got to speak their language. Yeah. Because if I say, oh shoot, darn it, rats, like, gosh dang it, guys, move faster. Yeah. They're like, who is this guy? Yeah. So unless I do some explicits, beepity beep, get your beep and, go, they're not going to move. Right. And so, we kind of just miss the context of that. Like, cause it's,
Sure.
you know, they're chiseling into gold plates. Like they gotta make space.
Oh yeah.
They can't put an explanation. We have to infer that.
Right.
And do the research. I think it was by design too.
And I think too, every, you know, my favorite apostle was a murderer. Like, you know, like, I mean, Paul was murdering Christians. I mean, you know, by the dozen, until Jesus says, "Why are you killing my people?" And the resurrected Lord showed up. And one of the things that I always tell people it's interesting is that I did a whole podcast on this, and I think you'd find it fascinating. I have to send it to you, but I did this whole thing about people who are transfigured, people that are immortal, like John, for example. You know, John was the one that, and this is all in the New Testament. This isn't like some strange, bizarre doctrine. It's like, if you're a Christian, you believe John is still alive because he asked for it, and Jesus gave him the ability to see, because he was the only one that all the apostles were all fighting about, you know, hey, which kingdom will you be in? Like, this is real life. You know, apostles were fighting about which kingdom they'll be in, and Jesus is like, what are you guys talking about? Like, why are you guys talking about this? Like, you guys know you'll all be okay, right? And then there's only one of you who said, I want to live here. I want to stay on this earth and do missionary work the rest of my life. And it's John the beloved.
Until
you return.
Yeah.
And then he says, this is the most righteous thing that you can ask of me, is that you still want to stay here and work and bless people. And I'm jealous. I wish, you know, if I was next to John, I would say, I would do the same thing.
Like, man, I wish I had that answer.
And I wish I had that answer. Yeah. But what's interesting is that, you know, again, it's in the details. I did a whole thing on with younger of the youth. They asked me to speak to the youth recently, and I did this whole thing about like how beautiful John fits in Jesus' story. And I'll just share this one thing. That's, again, this is all New Testament stuff, but like, there was a time where Jesus was on the cross, and he tells John, and he says, John, this is your mother, and Mary, this is your son, right? So the question is, why did Jesus do that? See, like, why did he do that? Now, it's because he knew John would outlive Mary, because John would never die, you see? So, and then he also knew, it says, from then on, John took her to his house. Why was that? Because she would go back to non-believers. All her children were not in the church, and they were thinking Jesus was crazy. And one of the major ones that actually helped, you know, Joseph Smith get the first vision was James. And James was a non-believer and thought Jesus was a hysterical, crazy man until he saw the resurrected Lord. And then he became the James of James 1:5 of, if ye seek wisdom, ask of God who giveth to all men liberally. That's Jesus's brother who was a convert only after he saw the resurrected Lord. He didn't believe him all the way till his death. Didn't believe him once, and said, "My brother is crazy. I don't know why he thinks he's the Messiah." Can you imagine that? So she knew she was going to a home where she's like, "See, this is what happens." Jesus. It was only time before our brother just had himself crucified like that, and Jesus is like, "You're not going home to that. John. You're going to outlive my mom." And you'll always stay in the faith, because you said you want to do missionary work until I come. So that's why she left John with Mary.
Right.
So it's just interesting. Like, you know, just all these little details of like I love to dissect things and study the Christ. You know, I love to study like, why were his mannerisms like that? Why did he do that? And it's a lot deeper than just reading the verse and just saying, oh, he just did that. It's like, you know, everything had a meaning behind it.
Yeah.
You know,
I think that in and of itself, that concept of digging or diving deeper into the details is actually like a greater allegory of what it's going to be like. Because imagine if you knew Jesus, like, would you be a skeptic? You know, if you were there at the time, like there wasn't some banner that said chapter 1 of the New Testament, like, and everybody was like, oh, like there were so many people that doubted, denied, and like cast him out, like denied him. And that's the whole reason. And like, you know, a lot of people I think have an idea of what his second coming will look like.
Right.
And I don't think they're detail oriented enough to catch the signs, even members of the church.
Right.
That's my personal opinion.
Sure.
I talk to my dad and my uncles, and they sit and tell me how it's going to go. and they gloss over those things. And then there will be war, and then there will be famine. I'm like, whoa, okay, whoa. Like, let's get into the details. Like, what does that mean?
Right.
And I catch them. They, a lot of LDS people like to prepare, but they're not detail oriented. And so they're checkbox oriented. I think a lot of people feel that way.
Yeah.
My brother, who's active, awesome guy, really spiritual, very knowledgeable guy. And he was confiding with me. He's just kind of like, what do we do now kind of a thing. And we were talking about that. Like, you've got all the check boxes done and there's no more check boxes for you to do. So what are you going to do?
Right.
Like, where do you go? Like, and so, they get all the check boxes marked. And then I go, whoa, let's zoom in here. It's like when you take an iPad and you zoom it in. Like, let's expand this.
Sure.
And I'm like, okay, you guys bought an X amount of ammunition because, you want to be prepared. But you bought this type of ammunition. You have a different type. You have a different type. None of this ammunition is like readily available very much.
Sure.
It's not used by anybody in like a main military.
Right.
It's some obscure ammo. So like, it's gone.
Yep.
Like, how are you going to find somebody to make this? They're like, didn't even think about that.
Yeah.
Like, because there's so many details and so many gaps that because of translation and because of thousands of years, like, we have to extrapolate that.
Yeah.
You have to.
Well, also too, there are some very educated people that have, as of recent, maybe the last 2 or 3 years, have had to go into different books like Widsoe books and Woodruff books and different prophet sayings, and they accumulated it together where now it's like a huge adaptation of everything. That's been coming out more in the last 3, 4, 5 years, and they're trying to take that seeking game for you. Because it's a lot easier. It's a lot easier to, if it's someone that you highly respect, like someone that you're like, okay, this is a really good author, PhD in theology from Brigham Young University, whatever. It's like they've done their work.
Sure.
Those are somebody that, like, I don't mind them compiling information.
Oh, totally.
But I have to go into the compilation of information to
you still have
see what's
to
going on.
seek
Yeah.
it. So,
and that's the thing is that like the church was never meant to give us meat. That's not the purpose of it. It was meant to give us milk. And then at some point, it's us to be like, okay, because that was kind of one of the biggest complaints that Joseph had. And I think all prophets have. All prophets have this, because Joseph was just like every other prophet, is just like that we are choking on meat and not being able, we always revert back to the milk. That was Paul's biggest complaint. I remember when I used to read in the Catholic Church, I used to read like Paul to the Thessalonians, like Paul to the Romans, like Paul to the, it's like, I was like, what? They never gave me the context for it. But in my mind, even as a kid, I was like, why is Paul talking to these people? Long story short is religion in its purest form is so beautiful in its purest form. But humans that disseminate it are the worst. They're just the worst. It's like that's best I can explain it. It's like anything of the purest form, like it's like a telephone thing. You keep telling people, and then by the end of it, you don't even like, what did you just say? It's like hieroglyphics now. Yeah, it's the same thing with religion. If you keep contaminating the water, it's not as pure as it used to be.
It's diluted.
It's diluted, and Paul to the blank is all about dilution. It's just the gospel was falling apart. And I think that's what is so unattractive now about religion is everyone sees the diluted water more than to seek for what's the pure form of it. They frame it, the diluted water in their house, and they go, this is what religion is. But there's something behind it, but you have to be courageous to go behind it, know? And I think so I always tell people, I'm like, look, if you're going to make fun of the church that I'm in, or you're going to make whatever, I'm like, just do your real due diligent research, because otherwise I'm about to run around you and tell you exactly where that came from, what that content is. And by the way, that wasn't even revelation, and they're like, wait, it wasn't? Like, and they don't know, but it's the same thing that newspapers do. They'll take a clip of whatever Biden says or Trump says, and they'll just make it into a whole new article that has nothing to do with what he meant there in the first place. Yeah, they changed the context. They're very good at that. But also religious people also have that where they if you're not in the right spirit, if you're not in the right openness, you may stare too long at the diluted water, and then you miss out on the purification of the water that was before. But it's
Agreed.
there.
Yeah,
it's there.
What are some examples of diluted water that you see today?
Oh man, where do I start? Well, one of the things is, I think when you ask for help and you ask God for an answer, I think a lot of people have different ways of doing that. They go through meditation. They go through actual prayer. They pray in their heart, and there's no right way of doing that. It's like God is not going to make it complicated for a homeless person and a rich, articulate person to get a hold of him, because God doesn't love the rich person more than the poor person.
It's a simple process.
It's a simple process. So if you keep things very simple in regards to there is a God that is trying to reach you, and if you may trip into a prayer, but just by life alone beating you senselessly, you will probably fall into a prayer accidentally and find God waiting.
Yeah.
And so I think it's like we're always thinking about how much we're seeking God, and we forget how much God is seeking you the whole time. And also when I meet with people too, and I talk with them, one of my favorite prayers before I talk to a congregation is God, you love these people more than I ever will. So you have something more to say than I do. And then I'm just get me out of the way. And every time that happens, my talk goes well, because it's he needs a television connector thing. And, when a TV antenna, when you're moving, it's I think that fear of speaking, what people have a lot, is that they have to move that antenna. It's very uncomfortable. It hurts your ears, if you will, the antenna. But once you get in the perfect tune-up, it's boom, this clear transmission comes through. And you'll notice people who say that, I had fear until I got to the pulpit. Then once I started speaking, all of a sudden, whatever, I think it's the antenna that finally matched a heavenly chord. And then it finally they're out of the way now. And God's saying, I can speak through you. Just obtain the word, and I promise I'll be standing behind you.
Yeah.
And it's there's a term that I always use with people, or a saying that says that God's not looking for ability, he's looking for availability.
Right.
And I just happen to be a person, and there's many others around us, and I'm not calling myself special, but even when I feel unqualified, I just raise my hand a lot.
You're available.
I'm available. I just said I don't know how I'm going to do this. I'll do it. And then this seems impossible. I'll do it. That answer to the prayer is really strange. And when I talk to this person about it, they're going to think I'm very bizarre and I may lose a friend, but I'll do it.
It's because the connection, it's simple, and you're pushing the diluted waters away, and you're it's simple.
It's simple. Yeah.
I'll do it. It's I don't know how yet.
Right.
But I know that the basic formula of connecting with God, or this science, this emotion code that's been given to you, also just the testimony that you have, it's a lot simpler than people think. I think some of the things that dilute the water now are, getting mad at a deacon who comes from a broken home because his shirt's not pressed and he's passing the sacrament.
Absolutely.
That's diluted waters.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's a good example.
Yeah, getting mad at a church function, or the example that they always use is the two members that were back in pioneer times that were fighting over a half pound of butter. That's diluted water.
Oh yeah, but here's the thing is, those are the people that God works with. And so it's similar to the movie The Chosen, one of my favorite scenes is Peter and Matthew fighting, and everyone's kind of gathering around them, and they're just fighting. Well, what are you doing here? But they're just fighting because everyone hates the tax collector, right? And then all of a sudden it's interrupted by Jesus walking behind them, and he just looks exhausted, and it's just he's walking all slow, and then Mary sees him, kind of runs up to him, and then takes off his sandals and washes his feet, and then he just slowly goes into bed. It doesn't even say anything because he's just so tired from just healing everyone.
Yeah.
And then Peter just looks at Matthew, and I just know that look on his face. It's because we're too busy fighting, we lost our opportunity to serve.
Yeah.
That's the reason why America and this world is falling apart. I just want to say this really quick thing. The number one reason why I feel like this world is completely falling apart, besides the fact that men's hearts are getting hardened, like this is a fact. That's why the heart wall, isn't it interesting? The heart wall came out 12 years ago. And the whole purpose of the heart wall is for us to remove the trauma from a person's heart, man or female.
Yeah.
So that we can be open-hearted, feel more connected to the Creator, feel more love from people, give love, clear love messages. I mean, to me, that's a utopian city if everyone's hearts were opened, right? But we're not there. The reason why there's war, the reason why there's everything is because everyone is playing in the chessboard of numbness. That's how they move, and they don't feel anything when they take someone's life. They don't feel anything anymore. You see?
Yeah.
And so, but what's interesting is that evil doesn't one of the major problems with diluted water. Here's my diluted water comment that you wanted, is that we're too busy fact checking on certain doctrines and different beliefs with other religions that we don't understand that evil doesn't care about that. That's the number one thing.
Yeah.
Evil will be like, hey, you're evil? Yeah, I'm evil. But you wear it with these clothes, you listen to this music, it's like, yeah, but I'm evil. It's like, all right, what about you? It's like, I do this, I'm a lawyer and do this, and I'm evil too. Cool, let's be evil together.
That's a great...
And because of that, and then look at the Christian. Hey, I heard he had one nail on the wrist. It's like, no, but he also had one in the hand too. It's like, okay, you go this way and I go this way because we don't believe the same thing.
Totally.
That's the reason why this world is falling apart.
Evil recognizes other evil. And accepts it. And truth,
in every aspect. Doesn't care who you are, what you do it late at night. Doesn't care. Just evil's like, you're evil, you're hired.
Yeah.
We're too busy fighting over small doctrinal things. The shards of truth that we forget to become a community and work together to raise the frequency of this earth.
Dude, that is ringing true with me, man. That's well said. Because the way you've set it up, this podcast, you said the shards of truth. You also mentioned that there's a lot of bodyguards around each shard of truth.
Oh, yeah.
And those like, if we can't get those shards of truth together, like we can't, you won't ever get, it's like you're missing all the pieces of a jigsaw puzzle.
Right.
And then you have to go fight your brother or fight someone else to go get the other piece.
Exactly.
Like, how are you going to do that? How are you going to get the puzzle together?
You can't.
You can't. And evil's job is basically done. They're just like, yeah, they're doing it themselves, basically. I mean, I think they're behind it.
Right.
The adversarial, the positive and negative, the yin and yang.
Yeah.
It's fascinating, man. Dude, that was philosophical.
Well,
you got me excited. That was really good.
Well, I've thought about it a lot because I'm wondering, I've had these thoughts when I was a kid, like, why is everything falling in shambles? And I really feel like to even add just a little cherry on the top, just on top of that, is that because we grew up, there's a thing in psychology called fail safes. Fail safes are like, it's almost like when someone programs you a certain way. A failsafe is like a way that you like can't remove something because it's sort of like locked in there. Yeah. So as soon as I get in there and I'm like, oh, I'm going to remove this. Oh, someone put a failsafe in there. Okay. How do I can't, it's like someone knew that.
It's like a firewall.
Yeah. It's a firewall. Yeah. And I feel like there's the biggest firewall besides people, looking at each other's differences and kind of like, separating ways due to small, insignificant doctrinal differences. That's the real thing. People separating is that we don't know really that the Joker or the Lucifer or Master Mayhan will always fabricate an adulterated version of the goodness that we deserve. So, in the past, there'd be like bestiality, making love to a beast, and then later on it's moved on to like open-minded, there's just like the terms change according to Satan's people and lawyers, just moving things just a little bit by degrees and saying, we're going to change this. No one should judge you for doing that. You're just open-minded, and so different things like that. There's like, prostitution. Oh, whoa, heavy. We're like whore. Whoa, heavy word. It's like escort, not too bad. Escort, So it's kind of like, again, they lighten the heaviness of something. And that's also degrading too, because we're leaving the Adamic language. Adam had it, and some prophets were after Babylon, kind of, after the Tower of Babel went down, Mahanrai Moriankamer, from the Book of Mormon, like he preserved the language of Adam. There's something beautiful about why would someone preserve the Adamic language? Because when the millennium happens again, we will go back to this beautiful language that Adam used to have that's pure and undefiled. We're not there yet, but we will all acquire that language there. But guess what has to happen before the beautiful, pure language happens? It's going to have to be the death of language. And that's what's happening, is the degradation of language. And if we change language enough, we will hit Sodom. We will get to everything is okay. Eat, drink, and be merry. It's like the language will degrade and the society will degrade.
Oh, it's already happening.
It's already happening, but language is going along with it.
Yeah.
But it's all literally smaller. It's the lower degrees of the Adamic language. It's the Adamic language being defiled to the point where it's going to get so disgusting, and that, oh yeah, cannibalism, who doesn't eat people? It's going to get so low, and we're going to be accepting of it. And that's where the light will come. And everyone will see it.
Yeah, I'll have to tell you some theories about that I have offline. Yeah.
But yeah, so that's just, I wanted to add to that theory there, but.
That's awesome. Well, I guess to kind of wrap it up, here's what I think we should do. I think we should do this periodically. Have someone interview you. Maybe not me, maybe someone else, maybe me again, who knows?
Right.
But like somebody, this is where we get to find out who you are. And I think that's important for people that want to come use you as a practitioner and experience what you offer, because this isn't it's an emotional thing.
Right.
You need to know, the more you know about somebody, same thing with a doctor, the more they see a patient, the more they kind of understand what they're going through, and then they can treat a symptom, right? Or help. But you're not in the business of treating just a symptom. It's a different thing. So my message to everybody would be like just one of encouragement to get out here and look into some alternate methods of healing. And I had one more thing. I thought maybe we could end with you. We know you're into the emotion code. We kind of know your end game a little bit, but I think I'm going to cut to it. It's your platform, Heal.
Right.
And I wanted to just give you the floor for that.
Okay.
As an outro, but
yeah,
what is that?
So basically, it's a platform that I was vouching for because I saw freedom of speech with holistic practitioners being lost. So everywhere I looked, I was seeing my friends getting banned from Facebook, in Facebook jail for about a month because they had a wellness hack that actually works for them and their clients hundreds of times. Whether it's to get over a certain type of flu or a certain type of pandemic that happened, and all of a sudden they are gone. And
certain types of flus.
Yeah, certain type of flus. Yeah. So I noticed that they were gone, and these fact checkers were biased people that are anti-energy medicine. They're anti-energy medicine. They don't. They believe if we look at the book called Lost Connections, it talks about how skewed the different medications are in regards to like their clinical trials, how they picked which one they're going to use, but they don't talk about how much it failed and did nothing. They're like, no, we're going to throw that away there. And, oh, this looks good. It helped out those 2 people out of the 864. So let's, and then we take it as science is telling us we need to take this. But when someone has, is meeting with 80 to 100 clients a week and they see pain reduction left and right, and it's usually 80% emotional baggage, then they have fear. Whoa, hey, and the reason why they have fear is because there's no money behind it. And so it's a threat to big pharma. That's what it is. So energy medicine is a flat out threat to people that are like, please live with Band-Aids. And then we're saying, please look for the root cause. Very different dialogue. One is long-term, one is short-term. One has, you can make a living with it. Other people are becoming billionaires with it. It's very, very different, and, but the reality is I think more and more now people are waking up and saying, I need a long-term healing here. I'm so tired of medication. I'm already getting multiple symptoms. So I'm starting to lose the credibility I used to give to the white suit. before I did, because, this is my first try out with a certain medication, and it works sometimes. But then when your body starts shutting down, you start getting chronic fatigue, or you start getting liver symptoms, then you're like, wait a minute, like this is this same person recommended this. So what does that say about the validity of what they're saying now? And so I think, so I made Heal to like have people speak out about their holistic practices. And it's a freedom of speech thing. I'm doing a book club right now. I'm doing, I just read the book. There's a couple books I read. The Map of Consciousness by Dr. David Hawkins was one of them. And I would read 10 pages every day. And it's like a book club, and I would just comment on it and say, go ahead, comment below it. And every day I was consistent, 10 pages, 10 pages. I never missed a day, just 10 pages every single day, because I believe everyone should read 10 pages a day to improve yourself. You're either growing or you're declining. Which one are you doing today? So I do that. So now I'm reading another book called The Porn Myth, and I just read my first 10 pages today, and I was like, wow, there's some really interesting facts about this stuff. And like kind of like the industry and why it was called, pornography, which basically means it was in the 1950s, 60s, where it was kind of brought up about it's the writings of a prostitute. It's the engravings or the writings of a prostitute. That's what pornography actually means. And so and then he talks about how it's an extension of prostitution, and so I was like, I never thought of it that way, very interesting, where it came from, what it's doing to your brain chemically, and things like that. And so, but I just thought, that's a really good book. A lot of people suffer with that tendency. And I have some friends that are into it, and I want to help them out, that maybe if I read this book, I can say, I read it for myself. Here, you can read it yourself too. At some point, everyone has had some issues with it. So why not read about it and see what it's really doing? And at the end, they'll find out they were sold some bad goods. It does things in your future life that you don't want. Kind of sounds like big pharma. It's like, it was good for a little bit, but then in the long run, it beat your body down. Right. But Heal was basically, I got group certified in January 2022, so I can now work in a group format. And so it's a beautiful thing. Instead of me working one-on-one with a client, I didn't believe it was possible, but it works. And I think we have over 70 plus testimonials in just like 5 or 6 months. And people are seeing changes in their relationships, in their abundance, in their health, and just being able to work with 40, 50, 60, 70 people in a week and about a certain topic. Now that's a way to opt in. You don't have to do it, but it's an option in that platform. And so I just encourage you, if you're not on it, just to go on there and just enjoy that everyone's there to support you in your growth. Facebook, you can write about like this amazing energy healing medicine or energy medicine session you had. You may have 50 people go, that's cool. Like, oh, you're weird. It's like people don't know what to do with your growth process. Here in Heal, everyone's like, yay, good for you. Congratulations. It's good to have a tribe of people that we're all into the same thing. We're all cut from the same cloth. And we're all supporting you. It's all going to be positive. There's no like politic debates, like which you'll see happening very, very soon. It's kind of a very purist place of like, everyone's growing. How can we help each other? And so you can go there on haveempathyandlove.com. It's free to sign up. And then every week you'll probably hear announcements on like a new weekly healing, and you can participate if you want to.
That's awesome, man. That's awesome. Well, dude, thanks for letting me interview you today.
Yeah, it was fun.
It's kind of cool to be at the helm of your show for a minute. I hope I didn't steer it too wildly.
No, it's great.
Yeah, but dude, I think you're an awesome, like, influential guy, man, and you make waves wherever you go. And excuse me, it's just cool to see, and it's been awesome developing a friendship with you too, and playing some PlayStation every now and then, and just enjoying. This is like one of the greatest times to be alive in human history.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and all this new technology, this new higher levels of like higher frequency stuff, right? So if you guys are listening to this and you haven't checked out Heal, like I think I'm still attached to like a group thing you do for veterans.
Yep.
And like, you called me one day because you're like, hey, I'm starting this group thing for you on Tuesday or whatever. And I was like, oh, cool. And I'm like, I'm busy. Like, that's awesome. I appreciate that. But I was like so busy. I was like in an appointment for work. And then like 5 days later, you call me back and you're like, hey, we've been focusing on like abundance and like positivity. Like, how's your week been? And I was like, actually, this week was like way bigger than I needed this week. This was like an epic week.
Nice.
And so there's something to it, man. And the more frequencies that are harmonious, all for one, the more powerful that frequency can be. And I honestly think that's what you're doing with Heal.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, dude, I guess we could end it there then, if that's okay.
Yeah. And I also want to share just one last thing is that on Sundays, I got this amazing, just very humbled by this download. I remember exactly where I was. I was in Las Vegas, and I was heading to my son's basketball game. And I got this beautiful premonition, like it was like God like telling me to do something, and I knew it was God because I'm just like, what? Like, so that's when you know sometimes it's from God. It's like, wait, come again. And what he said was like, on Sunday, let's do a healing where we just remove things so that way they can be more of how I see them. And I was like, what? And I do those sessions sometimes. They're called like higher self healings, where it's like we let your higher self choose. It's kind of different though, because this is like God communicating with your higher version of you, going like, what can we remove so that you become more of how your creator sees you? And it's kind of a form of supplication of like, I'm not going to like put any requests in it. And, you know, which is very hard for a human not to do. It's like I have so much stuff. Like I need to put this down on a list and like, you know, have a Santa Claus list. Like that's not what the Sunday healing is for. Sunday healing is just, I just tell people say amen, or so it is, or namaste. And in getting in sort of a humble position and just saying like a supplication of like, God, just remove anything that you think I need to remove right now, so I can become the person that you see, you know, that you've seen before.
It's the Jesus take the wheel kind of.
It's a very Jesus take the wheel Sunday healing. And I said, today, let's just focus on meditation, serving your neighbor, praying today, reading more deeply the scriptures, loving on your children more, just like really like having the family connected in a Zion-like way. Let's just do that for Sunday. And I promise you that Monday and Saturday will be very different for you. You know, and this Sunday healing is going to be very beautiful. People have been writing back to me that like my spiritual practices have gone deeper, and my meditations have gone more enlightening, and blah, blah, blah. And so even if you go to that, just for joining Heal, you get a free healing every single Sunday. I don't care what country you're in. I don't care if you're on a different planet. On Sunday, you get a free healing, and you just allow the creator to remove anything from you. Your children who are 17 and under are all included. If you have 10 children who are 17 and under, they all get the healing too. So that's a gift that like again 2 months ago I got that download and said, I'm like, for free and just to help people. Just, you know, yeah, okay. So I'm doing that.
That's awesome, man. Well, cool. We'll wrap it there, man, and we'll do this again sometime, I think.
All right. Thank you for interviewing me.
Yeah.